So today, 10.4% word problems. This involves a whole lot of cross multiplying. So if you were someone who was fairly confident with 10.2, this shouldn't be too challenging for you. What we're going to do today is read through some simple word problems. So they'll be in pretty much the same form every time. We're going to set up a proportion, and then we're going to solve it. Sounds pretty fun, doesn't it? Tomorrow we're going to look at more specific percent word problems. I'm going to take out the word simple because that's where it gets a little harder. So we're going to talk about this as well tomorrow. We're just going to get a little bit more specific with what we're talking about. Alright, so today in every single problem that we're going to look at, you are going to see an is word, an of word, and a percent word. Two of these numbers will be numbers that you're given. The third number will be a number that you're not given. Remember, when we have an unknown value in algebra class, what do we use in place of that value? Something that we don't know. Something that we're trying to find in algebra. What do we use? You want me to repeat the question? In algebra, when we don't know a number, what do we use instead? A variable. Very good. So like an x or a p. Those are the two variables that I typically use on this section. When I'm talking about a number that I don't know, I use the x. When I'm talking about a percent value that I don't know, I usually use the p. You can use them interchangeably. It doesn't really matter. You could also use like y or w or z. Just any letter, any variable, that's what we use when we don't know something. So for today, we are going to set all of these up in this proportion. Is over of, that's our first ratio, equals the percent over 100. So you're going to write two ratios. The second ratio is pretty easy because we learned yesterday that a percent means per 100. So the second ratio is going to be your percent value over the 100. And then the first ratio, we call it the is number and the of number. The is number can also be thought of as the part, and the of number could be thought of as the whole. So an alternative way to write this would be to think of it as part over whole equals percent over 100. And I want you to put that in your notes because as we get into word problems that are a little bit more in-depth, this will be the way that I want you to think about it. So is over of equals percent over 100. Or if you don't see the words is and of, you should think of it as the part over the whole thing equals percent over 100. Any questions so far? So we're going to start by, we're going to put the numbers we know in the right position. So remember, I told you you'll know two of those numbers. Put the ones you know in the right spots. Once you've plugged in the two numbers that you know, we have to solve for that one that we don't know. We do that by cross multiplying. And then we're going to divide to isolate. Remember the word isolate? The variable is the same thing as solving the equation. We're trying to get the x bar, or the p, or the w, or the z, or whatever, all by itself. Once the variable is by itself, you're done. If you are finding the percent, remember to use this percent symbol, okay? If you're just finding a number, you don't need a label, but if you're finding the percent, what percent, put this guy on the end so we know what you're talking about. All right, let's read through number 1 and see if we can figure out where these numbers go. 32 is 60% of what number? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a proportion. Blank over blank equals blank over 100. The 100 is locked in. It's always the bottom of the second ratio. Now, you should be given 2 numbers. You just have to decide where they go. So 32 is... Where do you think the 32 needs to go? Yeah. No. I thought you had it, so I said yeah, but then I changed. No. Yeah. No. Yes, the 60 is what goes over 100. The percent always goes over 100. But do you see how it says 32 is? So 32 needs to go in our is spot. Does the is spot go on the top or the bottom? The top. So 32 is goes on top. 60% goes over 100. Of what number? Of what number leads me to believe that the of is the one we don't know. So I'm going to put the variable in the of spot. So is over of equals percent over 100. Now, how can I solve this? Cross multiply. When I go this way, I get 3,200 equals, when you go this way, you get 60x. What is 3,200 divided by 60? $53.3333333. Today we are rounding everything to the nearest tenth. So I only want one number after the decimal. If you have 3 followed by another 3, like the next one is a 3, 3 does not make 3 go up. So you can just forget about that 3, leave it as it is. Remember, if the next number would have been 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we'd move the 3 up to a 4. But since it doesn't round up, it was between 0 and 4, we just leave it the same. So this is my x value. You could put equals x, that's the way it turned out when we solved it, or x equals, it doesn't really matter. As long as you have 53.3, you're good. What are your questions on that one? So the hardest part is setting up the proportion, the is over of equals percent over 100. Once you have that down, you're just cross multiplying. Alright, so number 2, blank over blank equals blank over 100. What is 80% of 30? Do you know where any of those numbers go?
80 goes over the 100.
80 goes over the 100. The percent. 30 is next to what word? Of. And where does the of number go? The bottom left. We're looking for the is number. That's why it says what is, because we don't know the is. So the variable is going to go in the is spot. Is over of equals percent over 100. Any questions on that? All right, now let's cross multiply. What is x times 100? What is 30 times 80? 2,400? Good? You could say 2,400. That's another way to say it. Then what?
Divide by 100.
Divide both sides by 100. What does x equal? 24. Good. All right. Raise your hand if you have any questions on the first 2. E. Blank over blank equals blank over 100. And this question reads, 18 is 87.5% of what number?
Okay. 87.5% goes on top of 100.
Good. 87.5 goes over the 100.
And 18 goes on top.
18 is. So that goes on top. What goes below the 18? The X. We're looking for the of because it says of what. So that's what we don't know. That's what we're looking for. Yes, 87.5x equals 1800. Now, if I was solving this, I usually go from top left to bottom right. I probably would have had these flip-flopped, but I'll get the same thing as you guys, but I just went with what I heard. All right, so we need to divide both sides by what?
What, 87?
By 87.5. By what's next to the X? So on my calculator, don't write it quite yet, but on the calculator it says 20.57 and then a whole bunch of numbers, right? I want to round to the nearest tenth.
It's going to be 6.
So yes, you look the number right to the right. 7 is 5 or above, so it makes the number in front of it go up. So instead of writing all this stuff, I'm just going to write 20.6. Questions? All right, next, blank over blank equals blank over 100. 28 is what percent of 32? 28, top left. 32 goes where? Bottom left. I'm looking for the percent. When I'm looking for the percent, I always use a P just to remind myself that I need the percent symbol later on. If you want to use an X still, that's fine. This is just how I kind of keep myself in check. 32, whatever variable you chose, I did a P, equals 2,800. How do I get what? The next step, what's bothering the variable? What number is right next to the variable? 32. So I need to divide by 32. 32 divided by 32, that just gives me one P. So P is by itself, or X, or whatever number you used. You also have to divide the other side by 32. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 2,800 divided by 32. Anyone have it? 87.5, and what am I talking about? These are percents. That's why I use the P to remind myself that I need the percent symbol. Questions? Number 5, blank over blank equals blank over 100. What should I do? 25 is, so that's top left, good. The bottom is the 75. And then what am I looking for? The percent. So I'm going to use a P. If you want to use an X, because X is what you're used to, go for it. Alright. Colin, you like the variable in the front, right? You keep going that way? Okay, I'll stick with it. So 75p equals 2,500. Good. And then divide both sides by 75. Anyone have the percent? 33.33333.
Yeah.
So we can round that to just 33.3%. Remember, we're going to the nearest tenth today. If you didn't go to the nearest tenth yesterday, that's fine because I didn't put it in the directions. But tonight I did put it in the directions for the homework, so you should stick with to the nearest tenth. All right, next one. Blank over blank equals blank over 100. And the question reads, Find 120% of 95. 95 goes where? On the bottom, yeah. Because it's the of number. And then where does the percent go? Yeah, the percent, even if it's bigger than 100, still goes over the 100, okay? Now, if you have more than 100% of something, the number should be going up, right? It should be bigger than your original. So my answer should be larger than 95 because I want 120% of 95. So remember, 100% would be the whole thing, 95. If you're going even more than that, your answer should be more than 95. So you can sort of double check yourself, thank you, to see if you're doing this correctly. So I'm going to put my variable here. Cross multiply, we have 100x equals 11,400. All right, next. Next. Divide both sides by 100. You can do the zero trick here. Do you guys know that one? No? Okay. Well, there it is for you. If you're dividing something with a zero and something on top, the zeros on the end, you can kind of slash them out together. So it's kind of like 114 divided by 1. Don't worry about it. Use the calculator. I don't want to confuse you. I feel like I do enough of that already. Any questions? Blank over blank equals blank over 100. Let's fill in the blanks. 42% of 50 is what number? 42 goes over the 100. Of 50. 50 goes on the bottom. Shh. Pay attention, because look, the is right after the 50, the of's right in front of the 50. So this might take a little bit of time. 42% of 50. You got to kind of look a little further, because is what number? So the is what we don't know. All right, so that 50's got to go on the bottom. We're trying to find 42% of the 50. So 50 is the whole thing. We want a percent of it, okay? So that's why we have is over of. Kind of tricky there. Questions? 50 is the whole thing. We're looking for the little portion of it, the 42%. Tricky, tricky. All right, cross multiply. We have 100x equals 2100. Divide both sides by 100, and what do you get? X equals 21. Good. Any questions? All right, last one of our notes. Shh, quiet down. We have blank over blank equals blank over 100. 75% of what number is 65? 75 goes where?
At the bottom.
Yeah. This, I tried to trick you by writing out the word percent, and it appears that I did trick some of you, so awesome. But yes, 75%, whether it's the percent symbol or the word percent, it still goes above the 100. So 75% of what number is 65? 65 is the is, it goes on the top. We're looking for the original number, the whole thing. All right, cross multiply. 6,500 equals 75x. What do I need to divide both sides by? 75x. Oh, you did 75x equals 6,500? That's fine. Same thing. You'll get the same answer. Whoa, I don't know why I put an X down there. My bad. Alright, so what's the answer here?
I know this one the same thing I just hated.
86.6p.
Alright, so we have 86 point, don't write this down yet, 6666 and so on. I want to round to one number after the decimal, so look right here. And then look to the right of it.
7.
Yes, if you have a 6 to the right of a 6 that you're trying to round to, that 6 turns into a 7, and then all the other 6's drop off. Now, the way I did it, it would equal x, or you could write the x in the front. X equals, and there we go. Raise your hand if you have any questions.